One of the main things about sexual abuse or that victims tell us is that they feel it's their fault. If it's a woman, they'll say, maybe it's the dress I was wearing, maybe I shouldn't have gone to that party, maybe I drank a bit too much. If it's children, they will think, maybe I'm a bad child. One thing we need to make people aware, victims of sexual abuse, is it's not your fault. No one should touch you. No one should touch you against your will. Remember, it's not your fault.
Welcome to Real Talks with Pinks. Thank you for the love we've been receiving on the channel. Please keep liking, commenting, and subscribing to the channel. In particular, I want to thank you for the love we've received on the part one of dealing with childhood traumas. I saw so many people commented and they said they can relate to the topic. So we are back again with part two, and we did not disappear on you. I know it's been 2 weeks. Technology issues, bear with us. So we are back again with Mme Mpheng. Do we need to introduce you? I think by now our guests know who you are, but I'm just gonna ask you to say something about the particular topic we're talking about. So it's still part two. This time we are dealing with early childhood traumas, especially in sexual abuse. Mme Mpheng, thank you for coming again.
Thank you for having me again. I guess I'll just start by introducing myself. It would be wrong to assume that people have watched part two. Maybe for some of you it will be the first time, then you have to go back to part one to catch up. Lebitso la ka ke Mpheng Thamae. I am a counselling psychologist by profession, and I am currently practicing in Lesotho. Today we're talking about childhood trauma, but especially in sexual abuse, and that is what we want to talk about today. Before we continue, Mepinki, it is very important. I don't think we said it in the last session, but we're aware that such content, at least especially the one that we're going to talk about today, can trigger a few things in people, and we want you to know that should you be triggered because of this content, please, if you can, book yourself a session with a psychologist. And if you can't, I think even just talking and processing it with a friend would be good. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. I think we'll get straight into it. Mme Mpheng, I want us to start where I'm going to ask you, how do we understand early childhood traumas that happen as a result of sexual abuse, especially in our communities and wherever we live?
I'm going to answer it in this way. Firstly, there are many ways to understand sexual abuse that has happened early on in a child's life. There are many ways, and people use different models. But remember, as we said in the last session, I am really going to try to bring it down just so that it doesn't sound too academic. So I'm going to explain it in 4 ways that I think we can see, that we can conceptualize and say this is what we think is happening. In terms of sexual abuse, there are dynamics which happen that can be seen in people. And like I said, in this particular model, what I would want us to talk about and at least to explain is what they call sexual traumatization. And this is where a child's sexual feelings and attitudes, their sexuality really, is shaped in a developmentally inappropriate way and interpersonally in a very dysfunctional way. Let me explain that. So for example, a child learns early on that I can use my sexual behavior or sexual benefits to get a particular thing. Because like I said, it's done or shaped in a developmentally inappropriate time. So that's sexual traumatization. And then I think the way to understand is just the trauma that would happen as a result of the sexual abuse. And then we have what we call betrayal. Betrayal is as easy as we would understand it. This would be when a child realizes that someone they trusted or that they depended on harmed them. It's just like, oh, but I thought I could trust you, then this harm has happened to me. Then we have another dynamic that is powerlessness, and that is when a child's will, desire, sense of efficacy, and just their body and their territory is disregarded. You can imagine if a perpetrator forces a child to do something, that means they invade their space, they disregard their will to do any other thing. So that's that. And the last one would be stigmatization, and this is a sense of isolation that would happen. A lot of times perpetrators will teach a child that you can't report this. If you report this, I will kill you, or they will give a sweet story around it. Sometimes perpetrators we have seen will use something like, if they know, for example, let's say a child's mother is sick for a long time, then they'll say, in a child's mind, it will make sense. I will heal your mom if you do this favor with me. Sometimes the stigmatization happens secondarily by family members and trusted individuals. I'm a small child, I tell Auspinki, whoever has done this to me, then you also hide it, for example, right? Especially in families, if it has happened in families where if it has happened, we feel like as a family we can just have a meeting and delete what has happened or explain it away, right? So a child learns very early, oh, this is, there's betrayal, there's stigmatization, there's powerlessness, because it's not enough that you took my power by abusing me sexually. Even the people that I told who I expected would help me also did not act in their power to protect me. So it's a really broad topic, but those are the four elements, or rather dynamics, that I would want us to see in terms of sexual abuse.
I'm traumatized just listening to you. But usually when you talk about sexual abuse, especially in children, many people are thinking girl children. But I know sexual abuse can happen to a boy child and a girl child. So what do we say about sexual abuse in males?
Firstly, that it's a reality. I think that's what we should know. Like you're saying, it's always explained in a way that it's always a girl, and we have stuck to that narrative. But there is evidence that males are also being raped. Adolescent males are also being raped. But I think in a society that we're in, where masculinity is explained in a particular way, people are afraid to report, because what do you say when you get to the police? Some people have also reported also being victimized even at the police station, to say, how did she do it, because I guess the reasoning is, how would you, being so powerful, not be able to protect yourself from such? But it does happen. I think the reason it's called sexual abuse, not girl sexual abuse, is that it can also happen to males, and sometimes they're not even aware, because of the toxicity of it, of the masculinity that we understand. If a male will tell another male, let's say a small child, to say, hey, Atiba, Aus Maman did this to me. Usually they'll be told, hey, that was a free pass. What's your problem? That was, they were helping you, they were making you into a man, right? And what they don't know is the psyche works differently. If it's trauma, it did experience it. And if you don't address it, you have people and males still to this day that are still trying to regain the powerlessness they felt as children. They don't know it, Or when we see it, we're like, oh, whoever is such a player, so promiscuous. We don't know. It could be that this person is dealing with something that happened very early on. And because their little mind didn't know how to explain it, they are only making sure that they regain that powerlessness as a dynamic, for example, or they're having problems in relationships because they don't trust anyone to say, I trusted a certain female and this is what they did to me. So it's for sure a thing that happens, and I think we need to do better as this generation.
Yeah. So I want us to talk about, you mentioned it at the start, but I want us to go deeper into it. What happens to a child when they are sexually abused by a trusted individual in society? It could be a family member, it could be someone from church, it could be someone from school, maybe a teacher, but a trusted adult. How does that shape them?
Yeah, you can imagine, maybe I'm sure it's another thing to be abused. I think it's another thing to be abused by someone that you trust. When we talked about betrayal, for example, I said it's someone that you feel I was vitally dependent on this person and I trust them, and now they have betrayed me. And so the dynamics, like we said, both in male and females, we learn very early on that, this is what males are, because this is when we're still very young. This is what females are, right? So it's almost like they set a tone if we don't resolve to say, this is what I feel, about males, about females. But particularly in families, we have a lot of cases sometimes where families feel like, we can just talk about it, it was, an uncle or whoever, and the family
meeting.
Yes, and the family doesn't want to be embarrassed. The neighbors will say what happened, your own uncle and everything, and it's embarrassing. And I think a lot of times, to protect the family, we forget to protect the child. And what does that protection look like, to be honest? And so, firstly, it's an illegal thing, so it's not something we can hide or solve over, a family meeting. But also, I think it also brings us to a question of realizing, rather, that times are different. We don't have luxury now of your child just saying, hey, my child is having a sleepover at a friend's house, and that's it, right? The question now is, who will be at that house? How many adults will be there? Because a lot of times cases have been, I was visiting a cousin of mine and their cousin from somewhere was visiting. You see, because then no one told you, hey, my child is visiting and sleeping over at your house. These are the adults that will be in. If just another person comes and they rape your child, you see how that happens. So I think it now calls for us to be a bit more alert and very, very clear to say, okay, how many people will be there? And just to be a bit more careful. You'd rather be a fussy parent than to now have to deal with something like this.
Because like you're saying, I think the most traumatizing thing for a child is that when they're sexually abused, they're very helpless. So that might shape them to think, this is what adults do, or this is what males do, or this is what females do. So they grow up thinking this is normal behavior. Either in their adulthood they do the same, or the same keep happening to them and they don't report it because they're thinking this is what happened.
This is what happened. Yeah, I think you're bringing an important point. Firstly, what we have seen in statistics is that a lot of people who have been raped become perpetrators. It's a cycle of, every time, most times, not every time, if you talk to an offender, they have been molested before, right? And I think also what you're bringing into play is also the fact that children learn this earlier to say, is this how it's going to happen? You can imagine how confusing it is, because sex in its nature is supposed to be a pleasurable experience. But now that you are a child, you are potentially it was pleasurable, but also you're told it's naughty, but also you're told to hide it. So you can imagine a child's sexuality is really, really, really messed up really that early. So if it's not addressed, we have people who still struggle to have with intimacy challenges, even in marriage, because for the first time they say, what happened the other time when I was visiting my uncle, another cousin of mine did this, And when we talk about sexual abuse, it doesn't even have to be penetrative sex. It could be anything that falls under sexual abuse. So I really think we need to do better as families and be more alert and be agents of change to say, no, it's not going to happen. And if it has happened to my cousin and my uncles and families are acting like we can talk about this, I won't, this is what's going to happen.
Okay. And lastly, here in Lesotho, where do we go to report sexual abuse? And what's our responsibility as family members, as neighbors, as community leaders?
I think it's very good that you're asking, like, because people usually think it affects the people who it has happened to directly, right? But as a community, we have a responsibility, like you said. The Child Protection Welfare Act 2011 also is very clear that if you're an adult that doesn't report the crime, you are the perpetrator as well. So we need to report. I think your subscribers will also help us in this. Maybe some of you are nurses, social workers, and you have dealt with things, and so maybe you will help us. But as far as I know that it is you report to the police, but there are different things. There are different villages and neighborhoods. Some people start first with the village chief, and then they go to the police. The police will then give the form, and the form has to go to a clinic. I know a lot of people go to our referral hospital, which is Queen Mamhato, but maybe I don't know where you are or where you're watching us from, but I know that it has to be filled by a medical doctor or medical personnel rather. And then if there are resources, then they are usually referred also for counselling, to say, while we have confirmed, for example, that this child was molested, so while we do that, we recommend counselling and so forth. So that's as far as I know, but I'm sure people will be helpful to tell us what to do. But really the main thing is to report. And as you can see, it takes a village. There's the chief, there's the police, there's the medical personnel, there's the parents, and the community to treat the child properly, even beyond that.
Yeah, I think those are the mechanisms that we use here in Lesotho. You could, if you don't know where to go, even social welfare, you could report. A social worker will be able to assist you and accompany you. Thank you so much, Mme Mpheng. I think this is a really important topic, and as a community, I think it is our responsibility to report sexual abuse wherever it happens. And I know these days people shy away when it's a trusted community leader that has been a perpetrator, but really we need to report it, and we need to shame these people and stop shying away from the truth, because it's happening to our children, and we do not want to be having adults that are distorted and don't know what's like good behaviors in society. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
This has been really fruitful. Where do we find you? Lastly, in part one, people asked, I know I said I'll write this time, I will write where we find you, but could you just say in one line?
As I said, I'm practicing locally, so I work from Moonstar Complex.
Next to traffic circle.
Next to the main traffic circle, first floor, room 15.
Okay. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll write all the details for Mme Mpheng for people who've been asking where you can find her. I think this is a really useful topic, and the time that we have may not be enough to explain everything. If you need to consult, please do go ahead. I'll write down the numbers and you can go. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.